God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement? What sacred games shall we have to invent? Friedrich Nietzsche. With that being said, welcome to the first episode of Logic Code with Toby and Ojei. Ojei and Toby. We still haven't figured out a name. I don't think we're ever going to figure out a name, but I'm so excited to do this with a close friend of mine. And the aim of our conversation today, of all our conversations, is going to be on doing a deep dive on things that we feel are important. We're going to be answering difficult questions in keeping with the ethos of this channel, doing things that are hard and trying to express ourselves as honestly and as clear as possible. So Toby, thank you for doing this with me.
Hi, Ojei. Good
How are you,
afternoon.
man? How are you
I'm good.
doing?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Are you going to ask me to introduce myself? Am I just going to remain a mystery on your channel? Or you
No,
want to
feel free. Feel
introduce
free.
me?
Introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Tori. First name Alex. You can call me Toby. I'm just a child of God designing cool things on earth. I went to school with Ojei, graduate of mechanical engineering. I found a passion for designing my third year, and that's what I pursued as a career. Good to be here.
Are you happy now?
I'm very happy.
Toby is one of the best designers I know. So, and he's one of the most composed thinkers that I have had the privilege of intermeddling with. And so, I think it's really cool that we're able to do this. Don't blush. Don't
Why,
blush.
thank you. Why, thank you. My
But
goodness.
I think it's
Um,
pretty cool that we get to do this together and have these, well thought out conversations and just share our opinion on these topics. So, I started off by reading the excerpt. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. Toby, is God dead?
Okay, what's a very way to put me on the spot, Uji? What's a very nice way to start this conversation? All right, when you sent me this quote, first thing was first thing I said was, "Wow, OJ has got some screws loose. He's out of it. What is happening? He has shifted to the side of logic. What's going through this guy's mind?" That's the first thing I said, and I was genuinely concerned, and so I went to go and do some research and actually find out what it meant.
Yeah,
Because obviously I'm a Christian, I'm biased towards Christian beliefs, but I'm not
yeah,
afraid to ask questions because I believe it is a very good way to come to a deeper faith when
mm-hmm.
you question things and you get answers that are in alignment with your beliefs. I think
Yes,
everybody should ask questions. And I think,
yeah,
first of all, preface before I answer the question, I think it's a problem that our society is composed in a way where the Christian community, where it is seen as a taboo to ask questions, especially controversial questions that people can't necessarily answer. So I've had experiences of trying to ask older people questions, or I have friends of mine that had similar experiences where they try and ask questions and then they are thrown off, or
yeah,
they get the response, "Why are you asking this?" Just expected to believe without asking questions. There's an
yeah.
aspect of faith, but there's also an aspect of questioning to strengthen your faith. So I
I
did
think
some
sorry,
research.
sorry. I
Yeah.
think to go along with that, I'm a Christian as well. So if I don't think we should be afraid of asking questions because if the Bible is true, then the truth will reinforce Christianity in a sense. So if the Bible is true and you're really in pursuit of the truth, then whatever you find at the end of the day will be explained through the Bible or with the Bible.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the things that we're going to be discussing are going to lead you to logical conclusions, but you'll find that there are parallels drawn from the Bible and they overlap because God
Yeah.
is the center, God is the value system, and He gives expression in nature.
Mhm. To answer the question, during my research, I found, first of all, I haven't read any Nietzsche. I know you're a bit more familiar with his work. I don't
Yeah,
really read philosophy. I do read, but I've never really read philosophy. And so I just went to the internet, like everybody should do, did some research. I found out he talked about this in a book, The Gay Science, and it was actually from the
yeah,
point of view of a madman. And
yeah,
so, little story, the madman runs into the market square and starts saying, I seek God, where is God? And then there are people around him laughing at him, mocking him. Oh, is this
Yeah.
guy lost? And then he goes, oh, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then on further reading, I started to understand the point of view of the writer, and it was explained that this was not a jab at Christians. This was not an atheist statement,
Yeah.
which was funny, because on first glance it seems they're trying to usurp the idea of the Christian God.
Yes.
But that was not really what it meant. It was a, um, it was trying to dethrone the idea of the modernist, the modernist system of thinking that tries
Yeah.
to put science, do you understand, in the place of God, in the place of a divine truth. So it's basically
Yeah.
the idea that truth is not gotten from the divine. And so the statement God is dead is drawing a parallel to the fact that the society has tried to eliminate the idea of divine truth which comes from the Christian God.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best way I can explain it. And so it is now a society where people are turning to a different source for truth,
Yes.
not the divine truth that people previously agreed on, not the divine truth that Plato believed in the old times. But we're now reaching a point where Darwin had published his
Origin of
relative
species.
origin of species. Thank you, his origin
Yeah.
of species, and people are starting to believe in something different from God as being the center of truth, and that's what the statement means. Not to say it's not an atheist jab to insult the Christian God, but an attempt to open up the new standards of truth that were being portrayed. And this is to summarize, this is shown because the audience that this madman was talking to were not Christians.
Yeah.
And so that gives you clarity. They were the non-believers. So
Yeah.
if this was a jab at the Christian God, it won't make sense for him to say that in the midst of non-believers. You go and say that in the midst of believers, right? And so
Yes.
that gives context to that statement.
I think the best way I can answer the question, is God dead, is from a metaphysical standpoint, no. God is alive and he makes himself manifest in a myriad of ways. But with reference to human existence, we certainly conduct ourselves as though God is dead. I mean, we live in accordance with our own mores and our self-appropriated values. And that by and large relegates the existence of God to a place of non-relevance. And so what Nietzsche is examining is the effect of this apparent relegation. Essentially, he's asking,
Yeah.
if God is dead in our eyes, seeing as we act as though he is, what are the implications of his absence on our punitive existence? It's a question of exploration. And as you rightly put, in the gay science, he's talking to individuals that are not Christian. So he's asking the people that are modernist free thinkers, the liberals at the time. He's asking them, since God is dead, what is the effect of this death on us? What is the effect of his death on us? Right? How have we shifted the markers? And I thought it would be a good way to start because it is such a complex statement, but yet it is so true. The fact that we all, I think human beings, the world today, does truly conduct itself as though God is dead.
Yeah.
And so
Even 130 years later.
yes, exactly. Even 130 years later, as though God is dead, and it was something he had seen afar off. But then the question is, what is the effect of that? Because Nietzsche was talking about the fact that the modernists had not really come to reckon with the death of God,
Yeah.
at least with
The
the death of
consequence of
truth.
their thought. Yes.
Yes, exactly. The consequence of their thoughts. Again, God is indicative of everything that is perfect. He's the highest ideal. He is the summation of perfection, truth, light. So everything that you can think of that is indicative of the path to salvation is represented in God. So I permit me to interchange God with truth and God with perfection as a synonym to align my thoughts. So I think Nietzsche was trying to allude to the fact that they had not come to reckon with the death of truth. So what is the consequence of that? I mean, if truth is dead, if God is dead, if perfection is dead, if that ideal is dead, how does that present itself in our environment?
Mm. Okay. Another good question, an excellent question. I would preface my answer by quoting something as Nietzsche said in this same book. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Nietzsche.
Don't
That
worry,
doesn't
like,
matter. We
I
know it
mess
was
it up all the time.
we know it
I
was a
say Nietzsche.
philosopher. Yes, Nietzsche. Yeah, all we need to know is that he was a philosopher and he was a thinker. Do I
Yeah.
necessarily align with his beliefs? But there's stuff to break down in the way that he thinks. And so his
Yes.
statement that I made, same book, is that is there still any up or down? Direct quotes now, is there still any up or down? Are we not straying as though an infinite nothing? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Has it not become colder? Is not night continually closing in on us?
Mm.
Now, this is really interesting because I feel this encompasses very beautifully the consequence of creating your own standards.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is that the people that killed God, they are convinced that now they are free to pursue higher orders of thinking. They are convinced that religion is delusion.
Yeah.
Believing in a supreme being is a deluded form of thinking, and these people that don't believe in a supreme God are higher order thinkers. They are more free thinkers, and us believers are basically just sheep. But the
Idiots.
irony is that, yeah, idiot, exactly. But the irony is that to put science as the center of truth instead of God takes faith and belief. You have to believe that science is true. And
And
so,
above.
and
And
above,
yes.
exactly, you have to believe that science is the standard
Yeah.
if you are going to believe in science.
No,
And so,
it's
my question
perfect.
is that, right, are you really a free thinker, or have you just shifted your goalpost?
Mm.
Because you're not any different from us. We believe in a supreme being, you
Mm-hmm.
believe in a supreme science.
Mm-hmm.
And so you still believe, but the danger is that science or the belief in something other than the divine truth, objective morality, gives you the permission to create your own standards. And so this now brings in the era of subjective truth, where morality is based on
Experience.
experience and feelings.
And inference.
And exactly, an inference. So how
Yeah.
does this present itself in how does this present itself in our environment? Trying to answer the question. I hope I'm not running in circles. Is
No,
that
no, no, no.
yes, is that we're in a society where the truth becomes what you want it to be.
Mm.
So we see a person wake up, feel some certain type of way, or wants to do some certain type of thing. And as long as he can get a group of people to feel the same type of way, or feel the certain kind of thing, they can, start a revolution and create their own version of truth. And then expect that people should just accept it into the body of truth. So the body of truth is now an ever growing, a compendium of different opinions, different subjective truths, my truth, your truth, to
Yes.
be accepted into a larger body of truth. And so,
Yeah.
what is the standard of behavior? If we take away this divine truth, nothing is really good or bad. And so,
Mm-hmm.
a good example would be this: you can't now really say that the Holocaust, the mass killings of Jews, is bad, because the people that did it thought they were doing good. So now, without objective morality, you can't answer the question, were they right or wrong? And
Mm.
so, what kind of world do you live in where you can see how dangerous of a society can create if you extrapolate this, where if a body of people think they are doing good, they can objectively say they are bad.
Yeah.
And so this is it creates a cascade of the falling
Of
wall.
chaos.
Everybody is subject to their own whims, and they create their standards of truth. And it's very interesting that you can tie this back. I won't go into this, but just to think about, tie this back to the Garden of Eden, where the reason, why Eve was not supposed to eat of the knowledge of the tree of the knowledge of good of and evil, according to the serpent, is that she'll be as wise as God. But if you read that text more closely, and I urge anyone that is listening to this to do some research, realize that God was not against Eve being smart or Eve having knowledge. God was against human beings creating their own
Dictating
standards
exactly and
of
dictating
good.
for themselves.
Exactly, which is
And
what we are doing now.
yeah, and I think that's something we're going to talk about. I think maybe in subsequent episodes of this channel.
Mhm.
What does the tree of knowledge of good and evil actually indicate?
Mm.
What is that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Because there's the tendency, and I had this tendency as well to think, why wouldn't God want Eve to have the knowledge of good and evil? Isn't it just knowledge? Isn't knowledge knowledge? And then when you get to that point, when you actually truly understand the knowledge of good and evil is the ability to remove God from the center and to create your ideals, your own mores as an individual based off of your inclinations, your feelings. Yes, exactly. Utilizing your free will as the basis for moral construct in of itself.
Yeah.
You come to a point where you see why it is a problem and why it leads to death. And there was something else you pointed I thought was pretty interesting, where you said the band of individuals come together and then you form a revolution.
Yeah.
And I thought, isn't what is revolution beyond the murder of another person's truth? Because what is now revolutionary was once the contemporary. Right? What is now revolutionary, sorry, what is seen as revolutionary today
Okay.
is revolutionary insofar as the fact that it's killing what is currently contemporary. And
Yeah.
what is contemporary today was revolutionary previously.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, because of this spiral effect of individuals trying to aim upwards insofar as themselves in pursuit of truth, they murder standards from generation to generation and then call it revolution. Don't get me wrong, there's revolution for the sake of salvation of a people. But we also have to be honest that there's revolution for the sake of revolution. Because someone else and a group of individuals with that person believe that what they are saying, what they are doing is right. I think in terms of how the death of God affects our environment, we plunge into decrepitude as a result of our dance with hedonism.
Please, that is big grammar. Please tell me what decrepitude means. Educate me.
it's the problem is I've not created a whole synonym in my head for the word, so I don't even know how to break it down.
Give a scenario.
But a place where we are no longer able to stand, we plunge into decrepitude, which is it's a state of being worn out. I want to say broken.
Okay.
Yes. Not well put together, not really formed. That's the only way I can truly contextualize it. And we plunge into decrepitude as a result of our dance with hedonism and nihilism, right? So to be hedonistic is to give yourself to your whims, to give yourself to sexual perversion and things like that. To be nihilistic is to believe that there's no God.
Yes.
Right. So
there's no point of life. Nothing.
There's no point of life. Yes, exactly. Everything is vanity, as it says in exactly vibes. Exactly. So we are broken down because we intertwine with those imperfect values, right? And so we intertwine with them because we remove God from the center, and the accompanying ideals of God, the accompanying ideals of the perfect. As we've talked about, when you remove God from the center, all that is left is the idea that there is no God. So you're essentially dancing with this nihilistic ideal, And yet, with nihilism comes the desire to fill that space of no God with something else.
Yeah.
You have a relationship with God. You can no longer have that relationship with God because you believe now that there is no God, because you've removed God from the center. So you must now fill it with other things. You must fill it with sex. You have to fill it with sex. You have to fill it with other people in your lives, and you have to try
Essentially, you
and
have to create your own versions of God.
exactly your own versions of God in your own life. Thank you for
You
simplifying
call
that.
it choice,
You
but
call it
it's really
choice.
not.
It's not exactly. It is a choice in some sense, but you are
Yeah.
putting the things on the fringes of existence and trying to centralize them and give
Mm-hmm.
them meaning. And
Mm-hmm.
in of itself, that leads to a breakdown, a total breakdown, right, of the social order. Because anything outside God, anything outside the perfect, is by definition, anything outside the highest ideal is by definition below par.
Yeah.
So there's nothing you can put in the place of God that is going to replicate the same effect of God, the same effect of truth, the same effect of a higher calling. And so because of that, social order in tandem fails to live up to the highest possible ideal. Like there's no you remove God from the center, you can never reach apotheosis level, which is the godlike level. You
Mm-hmm.
you just can't touch it. It's not possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So, for the less initiated of the audience, like me, for example, I'm part of the less initiated. Can you give, sorry, uninitiated, can you give some present day context to how this death of God has played out? Some concrete
Okay.
examples we have in our society, so that we can, can tie these abstract ideas to reality and people
Let's
can better understand.
let's go with this. So you have and follow my train of thought here. There are some things in society that are always going to be on the fringes and need to rightly so need to be centered. I'll
Can I
give you
give
an
some example?
example.
Yeah.
The feminist movement, for example, was on the
Mm,
fringes. It had to be centered. Wait, let me finish. It had to be centered. Women deserved rights. They needed to vote. They needed to have a place in politics, in power. And so we got to a point where these conversations were had been had and are still
yeah.
being had.
Yeah.
Now, when you centralize that, when you centralize something on the fringe, there is the tendency, by and
Fringe
large, for
meaning the
other
edge,
things.
right?
Yes, on the edge, yes. There's a
Okay.
tendency for things at the edge to also call for attention.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Okay.
centralize the feminist movement, for example, you centralize the place of women as you rightly should. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's also the proclivity of individuals who are seen as less important, who have the feeling that they are
Ostracized.
less ostracized
Yeah.
within the society, to feel like we deserve attention to. And then you have that transition. So the feminist movement gains traction, it starts with the suffrage in late 1800s, gets major traction as soon as women are able to participate in wars between World War One, World War Two, and then you start to see a lot of alignment within the late 70s, late 80s, late 90s. Around this time, you start to hear a lot of noise around individuals who are homosexuals.
Yeah.
And so they are saying, obviously we agree with the feminist movement because they by themselves, because of their sexual disposition, they are aligned with they are more effeminate, they have more feminine alignments, right? And so because they agree with the feminist movement, they feel they deserve attention too. And so they are going to get attention if they go in tandem with supporting a movement that is now getting awareness. And so that becomes a thing. You see the transition from homosexuality being a mental disease to all of a sudden being something that should be considered and looked at. At first, libraries considered it, most libraries in the sections in libraries, they put it under mental illness. And then they
Yeah.
slowly but surely transitioned it from mental illness to a thing of choice. And then early 2000s, mid 2010s, you're seeing conversations about it becoming a matter of love, a subject of love, because there's that transition, right? Like I said, with every revolution, you are killing the contemporary, and the contemporary, by and large, was the revolution of the previous day. So the feminist movement starts. You have people who are homosexuals that align with that, and they get attention themselves, and then that traction follows up. And then what happens when the fringe is centralized? The fringe of the fringe is then centralized. The fringe of the fringe of the fringe calls for attention, and then you have the transgender movement that really starts to pick up pace as soon as that gay movement is passed. So I want you guys to follow my train of thought. The feminist movement was necessary. Women rightly so, you want a society that, encompasses the rights of women and the rights of men, because that's the only way you can really build a proper social structure. You want to harness the best of both sexes. But in doing so, you also have to be careful that you do not include things that distort the true moral principles in a bid to satisfy the need to love everything. And so that is what we did. The idea of God is dead has translated itself in some of the things we see today. Men loving men and saying it is justifiable. Again, I have nothing against these individuals other than the fact that I don't think that is okay. Right?
Because our standards of truth come from a divine standard.
A divine.
We don't create our standard of truth.
Exactly. Right. And so you have, in today's world, men saying they want to be women, women saying they want to be men. And then the fringe of the fringe of the fringe, the thing at the extreme edge, is pedophilia. You are now seeing men coming out saying, oh, since it is all about love and since it's all about inclusion, I have feelings for a child.
So now
that should be justified.
A minor attracted persons.
Exactly. So
and now today's revolution, right? But then in a few years to come, who knows? It might be contemporary.
It might be the contemporary. So at what point do you stop? Exactly. There has to be. There has to be.
Question.
There has to be a line. Because it's getting blurred.
All the boundaries, yeah.
It's getting blurred. There has to be a point where you look at it and think, my God, none of this makes sense. It made sense when we were fighting for women. Maybe it made sense when we were fighting for people who loved, the same sexes, gay homosexuals. Did it make sense when we were fighting for people who wanted to transition? Does it make sense if a man who is 60 loves a child who is 10?
I like where you're going with this, because you are right, and this is the never-ending question of the people who have defined their standard of truth.
Yeah.
You by your belief, you have to rationalize everything. If there is no objective standard of right or wrong, then it has to make sense. You have to find a way to make it make sense, because truth is what we make of it. Right?
Exactly.
Isn't that what it is? And so you claim that, okay, by my biology, I mean, since I believe in science, I guess that's what the majority of people believe in. By my biology, I was born attracted to this sex. And so it makes sense. And then, so you now have to justify the pedophile, the minor attracted person that wants to be with a young person. You say, okay, if by my biology I was attracted to a man, I guess by their biology they could be attracted to underage kids that don't know anything about life. It could be a sexual orientation.
And it's all termed under love, because come on, we have to be accepting in today's world.
We have to be accepting.
Look at the way we accepted women into society. Look at the way we've accepted. So you justify, and again, the problem with a lie, the best lies are founded in some form of truth.
Yeah.
The best form of deception is 50% truth, 50% lie. And so that's why it's the best rationalization to use something as pure as the demand for women's rights to rationalize something as immoral as child perversion, right? As pedophilia. It will never make sense to me. But that is the best way you can sell it to an individual. I mean, look at the great work we've done for women, and look at the way they've been able to increase their social standing. Yeah. Don't we want to extend that same virtue to all men? Don't all men deserve this? Isn't this you
appeal to all humanity, right?
All humanity, yes. I'm just using men as a general term.
Yeah.
So you appeal to that sense of them that is calling for inclusion, acceptance, and you take everything on the edge of the edge and you centralize it in the place of God. So we have to define where we draw our values from.
Yeah.
Pause. So, how did God die? That is the big question. I think to answer this question, you have to go back in the beginning. You have to look at Genesis. But in more practical terms, the death of God is prescribed by our removal of God from the center. It is the transition to a drawing of the true values that define human existence from our own inclinations, from the things that, from how we feel. He's using how we feel to define what is good and what is bad, as if that is the panacea for all moral suffering. So, I think that's the best way to surmise the death of God. Any thoughts? Any counter arguments, Toby?
Yeah, no counter argument. I think we are on the same page. I would, just tie it up neatly and agree that the death of God is essentially us becoming our own gods.
Yeah.
And so we believe that we are free to create our own standards. In a sense, it is true in the fact that God told us to dominate the earth. He gave us authority. But there's a way to do it right, and which is we reflect the truth of God. When he said, ye are gods, we are gods, it is a call for us to reflect from the divine God, not from us, for us to go around and create our own standards. So just like the moon reflects the light of the sun, we are supposed to reflect the divine truth of the one and true God through our dominion on earth. Anything other than that is a fall into decrepitude. There's no other way. We are seeing it play out right now, seeing that people really don't know what they are doing. People don't really know what they are right, what is right or wrong. Without a reflection from a divine truth, all is utter chaos. For a while,
from the perfectly perfect.
Yeah, it is utter chaos. That's what happens. And I'm interested in seeing, actually I'm scared, but it is kind of interesting to see how the people that have decided to create their own standard of truth want to draw the line.
How far does it go?
Yeah, how far?
Where is the end? Where is the end of a bottomless pit?
Where is the end of the bottomless pit? Exactly.
I think it's interesting. Even that statement you just made, know you not that ye are gods. For the first time, it just hit me. Is it possible that God could have made an was it supposed to be an ironic statement? Because the follow up to that line is, I think, know you not that ye are gods, but ye shall die like men. We could search that right now. Like, we could actually Google that right now. It could be ironic in the sense that he's acknowledging the fact that we have made ourselves gods. And I know that there are other interpretations of this. I think Pastor made an interpretation of this as well. But there are multiple interpretations of this. But it could just be
so
that God was speaking from a place of, this is you guys are a joke. You guys have made yourself gods, but you guys
based on the context of that statement.
Based on
who knows? I mean, I can go back and research on that and be sure that I didn't use that statement out of context. Very interesting that you pointed that out.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I think the final thing.
Yeah,
go on.
Outside that statement, even taking away the statement of gods, just to be sure I know it's in out of context, he did tell us to come and dominate and replenish the earth.
Yes, no, he did, yeah.
Exactly. So it still follows, the rest of my points still follows that we're supposed to reflect the divine truth of God through our dominion on earth. You understand? Yeah. And then
the final thing is, what are the effects of God's death? I mean, Nietzsche points to the fact, and he says this pretty interesting, where he talks about, is there still any up or down? And you pointed out, brought that out as well from the gay science. Are we not straying us through an infinite nothing? And he, even previously, I think the line before, a couple lines before, he goes, who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What sacred games are we going to have to create, invent? So what is the effect of God's death? How does that affect our souls? What is the bearing? And this is the deep question, because Nietzsche is claiming the postmodernists cannot see this coming. This is the thing that they are not paying attention to. It's the same thing we are not paying attention to. What is the effect beyond descending into chaos?
Okay. All right. I'll take two approaches to this. The spiritual approach that we have not seen yet. And interestingly, our society now is the postmodernist that has not seen the consequence of their actions. We as
Yeah.
Christians know the ultimate consequence. And so from a spiritual standpoint, the effect is that you are committing actions that have consequences you have no control over. So let's assume for a second that there is a God and history. I believe that, but from a neutral standpoint, let's assume for a second that God is true, and me, the delusional believer, has
The Delulu.
believed and the delulu has believed in and followed the Christian God. There is consequence for my actions, which is heaven, spending eternal, being in God's presence for the rest of eternity.
Yes.
That's the consequence of my action. But there's also a consequence of killing God or dictating your own standards of truth, which is eternal separation from God, which
Yes.
us Christians call hell. Eternal separation from God. So from a spiritual standpoint, the effect is that there is consequence for your actions. You can control your actions now, and you can be your gods, but at the end of
Yes.
the day, there is a big, wonderful God whose consequences you cannot usurp. At that point, your godliness is done, is finished. You will face the consequences of your action, fire and brimstone. That's
You
what
will
it's
dance
going
to the music. You will dance to the music, dog.
What?
You will dance to the music. Sorry. My intrusive thoughts got the best of me.
That's fine. No, you gotta sing that song. Maybe we should find the audio and play it when we say that. Anyways, but that's from a spiritual standpoint, which is even more scary. The logical conclusion, really bad, but not as scary as the spiritual consequence. So from the societal consequence is the fact that it's a world that descends into chaos, because again, truth is what we make of it. There are 3 gods that govern a society. There is some standard of behavior. 3 out of 100 is 33.3% of the population follow one, 33% follow another one, 33.3% follow another one. Sure, there is some order. But now what happens when everybody is their own god and everybody can dictate their own standards, or a small group of people follow their own god? And so now you see God springing up everywhere in a society. And so there's a 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. And the ideals don't converge.
And all warring for dominion.
Yeah, all warring for dominion. Because that's what God
to.
wants to do. Exactly.
Yes, because people forget that. I can't recall where I read this. But the argument was sort of in the light of, we always see gods in the sense as individuals or groups of people have a god, and then they're all warring for dominion of that god. And then the question was flipped and asked in this way: what if the gods above are actually fighting for dominion and using men as pawns? Because if that is the case, and if every individual is then springing up with their own god, this is interesting, because you have gods that were not relevant 100 years ago now entering the play, and now making themselves manifest in ideas and ideals, and dragging. Essentially, they are fighting for control of the spiritual order. And we know there is a God, there is the highest of the highest.
Yeah.
But God's authority extends insofar as we allow him to make himself manifest in ourselves,
Correct.
in our lives.
Yeah.
So if you allow yourself to be corrupted by a different ideal that tries to usurp the place of God, then my God will allow you to do that.
Yeah.
And he will, the Bible says he gives them up to a reprobate mind. And we are using logic and the Bible, we're trying to draw parallels here. But as you rightly pointed to, that descent into chaos will be fast, and you will not know when it happens.
Yeah. And I have a perfect example. I have a very perfect example. I just thought of when you're mentioning this. It was very interesting, you talking about God's fighting for dominion. And so when the transgender movement started, it was really just about allowing people to be whatever they felt like. And that was okay, as long as you allowed them to be what they felt like, they were happy. But now it's becoming you have to call me what I feel like. And so now they are trying to infringe on my own feelings and my own morals just so it can feel better. Do you understand? We are trying to infringe on my own standards, and so
Control my tongue.
Exactly, my own standards. I believe that there's two sexes, there's the male and the female, but your own God is the God of I am whatever I feel like, and whatever. Gender is a social construct. It is whatever it is. You can be whatever you want to be, but now you're not just on your own. I have to conform for you to feel good. Do you understand? And
Yes.
so that's where the chaos starts, where for you to feel satisfied, you have to gain dominion over me. I have to be subject to the whims of your God for you to feel like,
Yes.
your standards matter. And that's the society that we're
It's crazy
descending into now.
how everything is tying together today. Because there was something I read in the book of Ecclesiastes this morning, and it said, God forgive me, I'm not trying to add anything to the Bible, so please take my words with a grain of salt because I cannot remember verbatim. But it says essentially, the oppressed have no one to the oppressed have no one to speak for them, or they have no God, and then the oppressors also have no one to speak for them. So that is where we're getting to. As it alludes to your point, made mention to the fact that for them to feel all right, they have to gain dominion over us. And now, because we as individuals are subject to a different God, right? We are Christians, but if we weren't, we're subject to a different God. That God would not speak for us.
Mm-hmm.
It is war. This is war. And their God also will not speak for them. The oppressed have no one to speak for them. The oppressors have no one to speak for them. Utter chaos. I think I'll wrap it up in this way. And this is the last point I'll give. God's death makes itself manifest in a myriad of ways. Some we can understand, some we can contextualize, some we can grapple with, others far beyond us in a place we can never touch. And we'll only reckon with those things when we get there. But I will say this. A consequence of his death that is often overlooked is the breakdown in communication that exists within individuals on this little ball rotating. It's the fact that people are now unable to communicate as a result of the distortion of the foundation on which language is built upon. The central common ethos, the value system, the one thing that we all used to point to, has now shifted. You need to understand that communication by and large exists only because of the shared understanding of what a word means. And so when our value systems are distorted, when we interpret the world based on internal metrics, when we create new gods for ourselves that now define what words mean, the effect is most certainly an inability to share thoughts and agree on definitions.
Yep.
Very simple example.
Interesting.
We can no longer agree on what a man is or what a woman is today.
Yeah.
It flies from you. So there is no harmony between us as human beings. We have lost the ability to now consciously strive upwards as a people. There's no unity anymore.
We're now just playing as discordant tunes.
Exactly. And when you're not united, forget about building the Tower of Babel. You are not even going to remain in the same place. You will all be scattered across the world. So, what's the effect of God? God's death? Chaos. And our death. Wow. This was fun.
In Genesis, God moved across the face of the deep, across the face of the chaos, and said, "Let there be light."
Let there be
now
light.
we're trying to revert back to pre-light.
Yeah.
The society is trying to revert back to utter chaos. The prince of the power of the air is having his way on the earth through his minions, and they are the people that believe in order and light. We are the ones that have to fight. I mean, we always knew this was going to happen, but we have to take as many people with us to our home of peace and eternal good. So that when it all comes burning down, we have more with us than fall away. That's our job here on earth. And this is a tangent, but just a statement of why we didn't just go up to be with God when we believed. Because that's the easiest way to guarantee that we'll not backslide. The fact that there's work here to be done. We are missionaries on earth, and our work is to bring more people to understand the truth that like we did, so that by the time our divine truth comes back to take us home, we are taking an army with us.
This was fun, Toby. Thank you so much for joining in.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, my pleasure. I mean, you know, the way this all started was
vibes.
Used to, just wake up in the morning, we pray and do Bible study, and a random conversation will just come up, and we speak, and then we're bamboozled. Kai, we sabi you, you know, why not share this with people that want to think? Because people that have stupid ideas are not scared to share. People that have no substance, the empty barrels make the loudest noise. People that have no substance are sharing their things all over the internet. And so it's not a game of my truth, your truth, I believe in Jesus and nobody cares. It is a game of the people that are loudest are the ones that will get heard. So if we're going to have these sensible conversations in private, we might as well allow people to learn,
to listen
and
in,
shift
and
from
share
their ideas we had, and
share some of their ideas with us as well, and correct us if we are wrong as well, right? That's,
of course.
We want to learn. So
For sure.
like this was fun. I enjoyed this. The goal is that we're going to try and do this as often as possible. The aim is that we do this every single week. So there's going to be a new episode of Logic Code every week, where we dissect very hard, difficult topics. We are going to be stupid on a lot of these. But we're going to be intelligent. No, listen, I'm being honest. We're going to be intelligent on some other ones.
And we're goofy, so it's okay.
Yeah, so
our personalities will shine through.
Exactly. But we are going to try, as always, to be as honest and clear as possible, and to go through the challenges through a logical, well thought out lens. So, if this is something you're interested in, if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this session, hit the subscribe button, share this with someone, leave something in the comment section, leave a topic that you want us to discuss and dissect, and we'll get to it as soon as possible, because we have a lineup of things that we want to talk about. But yeah, until next time, it's been Ojei and Toby and Ojei. We're never going to be able to figure out the name. But thank you for joining us on Logic Code. Take it easy, guys.
Peace.